next team up is Pittsburg State, and their question was, the National Bureau of Economic Research has indicated that without substantial intervention, the U.S. will be unable to compete with China in the global semiconductor market. The president has charged you with developing a trade policy that ensures that the U.S. will have access to semiconductor development and production for reasons of national security. What interventions or mix of interventions would you recommend to the president that accomplish this goal while doing the least amount of damage to the economy as a whole? The floor is yours.
Hello. As a principle, free trade is the most efficient means of acquiring resources across the world. Due to competitive advantage, it makes it very efficient and should be maintained if possible for both moral and economic reasons. However, if China gains competitive advantage in semiconductors and the United States is not able to compete, that potentially poses a national security issue. Potentially, we would have to get involved. However, to try and maintain this balance between free trade and protectionism, we recommend three broad solutions to this issue. Number one, we would increase our trade with other nations who are also efficient at producing semiconductors as a means to diversify our supply chain in the case of an emergency. Number two, we would stockpile semiconductors and the resources necessary to produce them in case those supply chains then get disrupted. And then number three, we would leverage our own resources against China as a deterrence from them interfering with our trade or semiconductors. We will look at this from a philosophy, economic, and policy circumstance.
As stated before, we are trying to get as close to free trade when creating this policy while also protecting the people of our nation and other nations. So the reason that we want to remain close to free trade from a moral standpoint is so that people are free to use their resources as they wish and also to better themselves and the economy as well. As stated before, important defense for our country is needed. We would need acquisition of resources in case there was a sudden decrease in supply from China while still maintaining that relationship. Quotas, embargoes, tariffs, they all relatively do the same. They cause people to spend their income at higher quantities than if free trade was available, meaning that people remain poor and they are not allowed to use their income freely and decrease.
From an economic standpoint, free trade is a good idea because the more we trade with other countries and with China, the more job opportunities are created and the more money that is able to flow, meaning that the economy would improve. Over tariffs, meaning we would have to spend more on import and export, which would significantly decrease the amount of money flowing within a country, significantly dropping it. We would also increase aggregate wealth within both nations, helping to support each other as well as any other countries, and diversifying our wealth amongst the different countries also keeps us with a comparative advantage over other countries, as we're able to spend more with other countries, whereas they would be forced to trade with us.
For the policy standpoint, the President and Congress should work together to maintain efficient trade balances with the semiconductor producers of the world, i.e. Taiwan, and other resource holders that hold the resources to produce those semiconductors. The President should also have diverse supply chains in the event that national security is threatened, and the President and the government as a whole should hold favorable resources necessary for semiconductor production in the case of supply chain disruption.
So, summary, we're gonna look at this from philosophy, economic, and policy decisions. Our goal here, as stated before, is to maintain free trade and be prepared for the event of an emergency. So from a philosophy perspective, this is a moral move because it allows Americans and the people that we trade with to be able to create the most value with their resources. And so that means that we will be able to have more stuff than if we just cut off trade right now. And that can, if we cut off trade, it has the potential of harming people. And so we want to protect that from a philosophy perspective. Economically, it also makes sense to maintain free trade, as said, is the most efficient means of acquiring our resources. And so we could instead diversify with potentially Taiwan or Japan or other nations in the area that might still have that competitive advantage of producing microchips. And then from the policy perspective, as we said, we would maintain a stockpile of our semiconductors and the resources to make them. Diversify our supply without using restrictive measures like tariffs, quotas, etc. And leverage our own resources, such as silicon, which is abundant in the United States and is necessary for semiconductor production. And that is our case.
All right, thank you. We have time for questions.
So your three-step policy, are you able to accomplish those three things and maintain free trade?
I believe so. I believe if we were able to diversify or be in good standings with nations like Taiwan, we would be able to secure another nation that is able to produce semiconductors more efficiently, which right now Taiwan is the leader of semiconductor production. Not to mention, the United States is also a good partner for that, seeing as we have abundant silicon and most of the blueprints to make those semiconductors come from the United States.
To follow up on that question, the first part of your plan is to increase trade with other countries like Taiwan, which currently produce semiconductors, right? And it seems like, I mean, it sounds great to say we're gonna increase it, but I don't know what mechanism increases that absent some kind of intervention. Can
Something else.
or do you mean like leave trade free and open to be increased should people want to buy more from Taiwan? Or do you actually mean, no, we're going to actually increase it? And then if we're actually gonna increase it, how, by what means?
By what? We're trying to maintain a diverse supply. And so what we're saying is we're not going to cut down how much we're buying from China or Taiwan or any other nation for that matter, but leave it open so that businesses are able to still get that supply. We don't want to have any political interference between our nation being able to get the resources we need. And so if we still have good terms with Taiwan, Japan, etc., then we will be able to get those supplies, whether or not China is providing them or not. And so it's just, we will have those resources available to us in that event of national security.
So it seemed like the president was concerned with the United States being able to compete in that market. Would those interventions allow us to compete, or do you feel like that's not important?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The three interventions that you mentioned, would that allow us to compete if that's what the president wanted to accomplish?
I do not believe so. I believe what we're trying to do here is maintain our ability to produce those for a specific libertarian purpose, and that is national security. We cannot force ourselves to have a competitive advantage without some sort of subsidy or restriction of trade, which would still hamper, it would hamper the value we're getting out of our own resources. So I believe the solution, make sure that we get that value while also preparing us for a necessary thing we have to prepare for.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, Pitt State.